This video sponsored by Magic Spoon. Hey everybody, it's time for the Deathloop video. Well, screw it. We gotta rip the band-aid off for this one. It's not that Deathloop was bad per se, it's just that after the initial wow factor of playing an Arkane game fresh off the presses wore off, the magic started to fade and it's an okay game, I guess. Not terrible, but not nearly the most memorable game that all of Arkane's library has in it, or even what they've put out in the last 5 years. The best place you can see this is in the Metacritic scores and the Game Awards. Gaming press loved Deathloop, but people installing it just for fun, not so much. As a guy who did personally have a great time at Deathloop's launch, I can see where the review outlets are coming from. So long as you have a monster of a machine to run the game on and you're already familiar with what kind of a game Deathloop is gonna be, it's a great time. Then the crashes started happening for me, and while it didn't take away the good times I had previously had before the flurry of hotfixes that revoked my "it works on my machine" status, it was still enough for me to take a break from the game and wait until it was all smoothed over and I could play consistently again. Now, about all those awards. Deathloop won Best Music, which I personally think was warranted, and also Best Game Design, which I really can't comment on because out of all the nominees, Deathloop was the only one that I played, so I can't really speak on the design merits of the others. Outside of those though, Deathloop was nominated in a lot of places but didn't win anything else, often getting chosen by games that beat out in the two categories it won. By the way, while we're on the subject of the Game Awards, Guardians of the Galaxy earned that story award, and we're gonna have a video about that one of these days when I can find the time. I have all the footage recorded, I know what I want to say, just I'm a busy dude. As for how I feel about how Deathloop was treated at the awards show, I think it's fair, if maybe a little generous. I personally worried that if Deathloop swept the awards, it'd cause a hubbub as people were already pretty upset for the game being so favorably reviewed by the presses when they did not have such a good time. So flash forward to the time where I gotta get this video done and I ran into a big problem. After taking a break from the game to let the issues get sorted out, I found myself with no will to resume and finish the game. I ended up replaying other things in Arkane's library or other games that I just really had an itch to play, but no Deathloop until I absolutely forced myself to finish the game. It wasn't like a burnout thing either, as I was able to sink 25 hours into Streets of Rogue the other week, no problem. It was more of a, can I just play Mooncrash instead type deal, but more on that later. I basically had to force myself to get to the end of Deathloop for the sake of having relevant footage, and otherwise I would have been fine just walking away from the game about 10 hours in. When I finally did get around to finishing up Deathloop, it felt like I had already done all the fun stuff in that first 10 hours of gameplay, and now I was just going through the motions for the sake of finishing it. I had already seen how it was done thanks to this year's GDQ, and I was pretty close to the end anyway by my own reckoning. Yeah, you've got the chaos system to make things spicier as you go, asterisk, but once you're on track to finish this thing and you know what you need to do, there's not much in your way. I know that a lot of this game is piecing together the mystery of how you get everyone in one place at one time together for your own reasons, but I already knew all those things that I needed to do, and it was just a matter of creeping around the map at the right time to do them. Anyway, let's get into the meat of this video. So if I had to describe Deathloop's core gameplay loop, I'd say that it's Arkane playing the hits. If you've already played anything by Arkane in the past, you're gonna recognize a lot of stuff, from the turrets, to your bread and butter teleport ability, to the really long load times even on an SSD. The gang's all here. Now, as I understand it, Game Maker's Toolkit recently made a video presenting a very similar idea, or even this same idea, and I'll let you all know that I have this stupid YouTube Bushido thing I do, where if I'm currently in the process of making a video and someone else puts out something on the same topic, I will not watch or so much as click on that video until my video is finished and live. It's mainly because I don't want to accidentally plagiarize or be overly responsive to someone else's work. I want my stuff to stand on its own, and if certain things appear in both videos, that just further cements the idea as it's something that two separate entities were able to independently come to, therefore it's more solid of a talking point. Now that that's out of the way, it's really cool to see somewhat refined versions of things from other games from Arkane's past, and Lord knows there's a lot of references to past Arkane titles in Deathloop, but after a while you find yourself saying, man, I could be playing that other game right now. Well yeah, Deathloop has a kick and I can heavily upgrade my kick in Deathloop. I could just play Dark Messiah where the entire game is built around the kick and I could have more fun kicking there. It's cool that I can teleport around Updom, but now I kinda just want to play the Dishonored series instead. Hey, neat, I can hack turrets, just like in Prey, except without the obnoxious minigame. But now I just want to boot up Prey again. A lot of these abilities feel like they were implemented with hindsight 2020 from Arkane's previous installments, as they're all arguably improved versions of the abilities that they're based on, but at the same time, all these things have to come together and make room for each other in a way that makes Deathloop a jack of all trades, but master of none. It's impressive that it can accommodate all these features and that, at least on a surface level, they're all improved versions of ones from older games, but sometimes there's just too much to take into account in designing around all this, so you end up areas where it's a bit obvious what you were supposed to do, which just feels dirty talking about an Arkane game like that. Let's talk about something new though, the invasion system, where you protect the loop instead of trying to break it. I'll come clean here. My main campaign was single player only, as I wanted to experience what the game and the game alone had to offer without the help of a human, and then when I finished it, I had absolutely no will to play any more of the game. I had to force myself to finish my first playthrough. Invasion systems aren't anything new, and it's good to see that a Bethesda title actually delivered on the promise of an invasion system, but I really don't want to get ganked by XXX Taint Slayer 420 XXX, and that really isn't much of a draw for me to do the opposite. I'm not a fan of ruining people's days, despite me regularly uploading. I get what they were going for here, but what is a player Julia gonna do that an AI Julia can't, aside from potentially start hacking? And because I know someone is gonna say it, let's just get this over with. No. Deathloop is not like Dark Souls' invasion system, because unlike Deathloop, Dark Souls lets you do a whole lot more stuff beyond just trying to kill the host. If anything, Deathloop would have done well to rip off the Dark Souls formula of invasion, where maybe instead of playing Julia, you could invade the world as another version of Cult and try to help kill all the visionaries, or maybe even be the equivalent of a mad spirit and help the host kill Julia, only to decide to do an advanced vibe check on the host right as they were about to escape with a killed visionary under their belt. By the way, I'd love to show you more relevant or recent clips, but as I write and record this, that whole thing is still going on with like remote code execution in the Dark Souls servers, so yeah, that's not being on my hard drive right now. Outside of the stuff we've already seen in previous Arkane games and the invasion system, Deathloop adds a bunch of really generic stuff that we've seen in another million games already. Like, yeah, I get it, not everything can be the glue gun or summoning a horde of rats to eat corpses, but I was kinda hoping not to see color-tiered weapon drops and farming for unlocks in an Arkane game. Sure, some of these are consistently found in certain scenarios, namely all the arsenal leads, but after a certain point I found myself just baiting Julia spawns to get an exploding single-shot rifle, which essentially one-shots everyone and everything in the game, and then not bothering with anything else, since between that and the pre-order pistol you cannot do much wrong. Then there's tiered upgrades to match the guns, hoarding an in-game currency to keep all the fancy stuff you've unlocked in your loops, and quick scoping. Yeah, the few new things Deathloop does for an Arkane game aren't very original. So let's now talk about the big pull of Deathloop. The time loop. Yeah, it's real cool at first just being able to rerun a level in the exact same settings as you've done before to play around with new styles or trying out different objectives in different orders to see if something is more effective, and then it wears off. You've got 4 different areas with 4 different times of days for 16 possible levels, but you'll find that you'll be frequently going to the certain areas certain times over and over again to follow certain leads. There are ways to do things more efficiently later on, but by the time you figure out exactly how to do them, you've already done everything you've needed to in that area, so there's no point in going back at all. I'll credit that in true Arkane and imsim fashion, if you go somewhere earlier in the day and do some stuff like vibe check a dozen dudes in one area, you'll find that later in the day there are a lot less dudes over there. And tampering with things early in the day to change the outcome later on is baked into the story, but it doesn't mitigate that you're just playing the same 4 levels with slightly different skins over and over again. Looking back, the longer than usual tutorial might have been an attempt to hold you off from realizing that you're going to be playing these 4 levels by my own account about 16 hours. The bulk of what you're going to be doing when you get over the initial high of causing as much chaos as possible knowing that you can just reset later is following leads so that you can figure out the perfect day. From the outset, as you're still figuring out each of the 4 areas, it won't be so bad because you'll be exploring the levels and learning them, but once you're about, I don't know, maybe to the point where you're figuring out how to get everyone who might be able to go to the party at the party, it just feels like busy work. Maybe I'm crazy, but at least least a few times I felt that it was very convenient that the next step I had to follow in order to go through a certain lead just so happened to be another area at the same time of day or in the same area earlier in the day, so I would have to either auto skip to the next day and potentially not have enough fun bucks to infuse all the cool stuff I found so far, or just waste time in another area just dicking around. Maybe I'm crazy, or just noticed it more because your brain is hardwired to notice the bad stuff more than the good stuff, or maybe I was playing inefficiently, I don't know. What matters though is I found myself playing a lot of areas where I really had no reason to play in those areas other than it felt that it was wasteful to just skip through an entire part of the day. The result was that I was so farmed up that by the time that I was ready for the perfect day, I was clowning on Julia inside of 10 seconds of her spawn, or sometimes just outright one-shotting her. Between this and all the colorful loot drops, I honest to God felt like I was playing some sort of single player version of a freemium multiplayer game at times. There's only a handful of levels that are each only slightly reworked a few times. You replay them a ton to get better unlocks so that you can go for slightly harder versions of that level, and in the end, all you've got to show for it is a bunch of purple item boxes that have higher numbers than the green, blue, and gray item boxes. Calling back to my first impressions video of Deathloop, I said that one of the initial problems I had with the game was that it felt way too easy. A number of folks came out of the woodwork on Twitter telling me that, oh, it gets much harder once you start going for the perfect day, and referenced how the loop will become more unstable as more visionaries get knocked off. This was either an outright falsehood, or the guy who got clowned on himself for sucking at Doom Eternal, yours truly, just clowned on everyone that said that Deathloop was hard, because it was not. Do you know how many tries it took me to do the perfect day once I had everything locked up? One. I did it first try once I had got all the leads cleared. Thanks to taking the time to skip as little as possible because I wanted to get as many leads done as possible for the next step of the major ones, I was so kitted and fitted that nothing stood in my way, and I almost forgot that it was supposed to get more difficult as you killed more visionaries. In fact, come to think of it, I one-shotted the final visionary, and that was after plowing through the entire fortress, only dying once because it was more convenient to just let them get me and reposition myself than it was to clear out all these dudes. To its credit though, Deathloop did fix the save scumming problem by basically resetting the whole game save for your saved unlocks at the end of every day, so if you whiff, well, that sucks, but you can just do it over in a few minutes. You know, as I write that down, I'm realizing that the loop is basically just save scumming with extra steps involved. It did encourage me to play louder than I usually do in immersive sims though, at least for a while. What really bothers me though is at times you can whiff certain objectives, which the game will tell you to just loop back again and try again next time, and it'll leave you going, gee, I really wish I could have just save scummed there, like just reloaded this one part. There'll be some silly little thing like the talking wolf toy falling off a cliff because I put it down slightly wrong or walked into a landmine. So now rather than replaying the last 5 minutes through save scumming, I gotta replay the last 20 because I gotta redo the whole loop all over again. After a while, things like this happened to be like, I don't know, 2 or 3 times, and I ended up playing in this overly risk-averse manner where I just completely wipe out anyone and anything in the immediate area of anywhere near an objective, and then intentionally bait out Julia so that I could just walk through the lead and not have to worry about some fodder enemy making me drop a vital item or trigger a fail state on a lead. So yes, while in theory the loop is a good way to get rid of save scumming, arguably in practice it is actually worse than save scumming at times. The time loop's encouragement to mix things up as you play comes back to bite itself later on too. While I first found myself getting more experimental since I knew I could just do this scenario over and over again as many times as I wanted with no consequences, later on I realized that while Deathloop only limits me to my imagination for getting things done, my imagination is limited by dominant strategy. As you get more familiar with each area during each time of day, you're eventually going to figure out the most efficient way to get through each of the areas depending on your play style, and instead of being creative, you're just going to be literally playing the same level, doing the same exact thing over and over again, because if you didn't, you'd just be kicking yourself for wasting time, and there's only so much you can take of these 4 levels. The irony of this is not lost on me. Let's take a little break from the loop to give some love to our sponsor for today's video, Magic Spoon. Magic Spoon is a cereal brand that aims to make having a healthy breakfast not so painfully dull anymore by making a high-protein cereal that's keto-friendly, gluten, grain, and soy-free that comes in a lot of fun flavors. This month they sent me blueberry, cinnamon, cookies and cream, and the maple waffle flavors to try out, and I'm gonna be honest with you all right now. This cinnamon box has been empty for a while. I really enjoyed how it actually tasted like cinnamon instead of pure sugar that might have been cinnamon flavored at one point. Speaking of a lack of excessive sugar, every serving of Magic Spoon cereals has 0 grams of sugar, between 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs that's all packaged inside of 140 calories. Go on and click the link in my description below to try Magic Spoon today, and you can build your own variety box with all the hits like Coca and my personal favorite, the peanut butter flavor, and also use my code CharlatanWonder at checkout to get $5 off your purchase. All the viewers in the UK and Canada can get in on this too, as Magic Spoon is now shipping to the United Kingdom and Canada so that you can taste a healthy freedom cereal too. And Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed by a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund you your money, no questions asked. So click the link below and use the code CharlatanWonder for $5 off, or go to magicspoon.com/CharlatanWonder to save $5 off your order today. So at this point, I may as well say it. Some people might call Deathloop just another example of the curse of the immersive sim. I'm not really sure how though, as I've always associated the curse with being broken but brilliant games that end up sinking studios, but I guess you could argue that Deathloop's state on launch was pretty cursed. Regardless, I personally don't believe in such a curse, and if anything, feel that Arkane's existence is proof to the contrary, as they've grown into 2 sister studios making nothing but immersive sims that are rather successful. I do believe, however, that the type of studio that makes immersive sims frequently ends up being prone to making certain bad decisions in the same way that a, say, visionary director, quote unquote, of movies will frequently fall into the same kinds of pitfalls, making their like magnum opus or something they really want to make, and it ends up being a disaster. Why do we see this so much among immersive sims, even among different studios? Because every auteur, director, and creator is unique and special in their own way that just happens to be just like everyone else. Kind of like your order at Starbucks. Sure, it's unique and you do it in a way that only you do it and no one else around you does it just like you, but on a larger scale, there are thousands and thousands of people that do it just like you. If I think about it more, it feels like Deathloop was trying, asterisk, to be more experimental with this format and fell on its face when we all did exactly what was expected of us. Unfortunately, Deathloop sacrifices solid core mechanics and other design stuff like having cool, unique areas or set pieces, and what it sacrificed for those things ended up not hitting the way Arkane wanted it to. In the end, they got rewarded for this experimentation through the Game Awards and what I'm going to assume are some pretty decent sales based on press reviews, but part of me thinks that this was also Arkane being well known for their quality and putting out something of decent quality in a year that didn't have much going on for it in the way of novel design. At least when it came to shooters anyway. Now as for the issue of semantics, as I've already gotten a few of the comments in some of my more recent ImSim videos lately, I don't really care. I accept that immersive sim is a poor label, but it's the one that stuck when Spectre used the term all those years ago, and the world would be a very dull place if we named everything in a strictly descriptive label, and I like to believe that people are smart enough to draw inferences to what a thing is based on the body of work associated with it. And additionally, things change over time, and like the best example I can think of is the save icon. Like, can you remember the last time you saw a computer sold in stores that had a floppy disk drive? It's sort of an archaic thing, and if anything, it's semantics. It's not really worth talking about. I know I can't change everyone's mind though, so I'm not going to try. Now let's move on to what really bugged me about Deathloop. Deathloop is essentially pre-Mooncrash version 1.5, where they changed the story and setting, and frankly, I think that Mooncrash is the better of the 2 games. It's nothing against Deathloop's setting and story, which I think are much better than Mooncrash's, since Mooncrash is an expansion to another game after all, but Mooncrash's mechanics feel like better versions of what Deathloop had going for it. Heck, while writing this script, I got bored and played an extra 6 hours of Mooncrash, and then when I had to start recording it, I played another 3 hours because I'd rather focus on Mooncrash than I would on Deathloop. This isn't harsh contrast to how I felt about Deathloop, where I had to force myself to finish the thing. In case you're a little lost here, Mooncrash is the expansion to one of Arkane's previous games, Prey, which took all the building blocks of a really cool game and redesigned them into a pseudo-roguelike where you simulate the memories of several members of a doomed moon base so that you can steal corporate secrets. The levels themselves stayed mostly the same, with certain things being functional or broken at the start of each run, which will likely have a big effect on how you approach things, and additionally, all the escapees are on the same loop, meaning things you do in a previous run will affect the next run you do. And this can sometimes benefit you too, because if you're doing really well on an earlier run, you can intentionally hide a bunch of extra stuff you don't need in an area where you know the next person will be able to easily go and grab it, giving yourself a big boost on your next run. So Mooncrash's loops work by allowing you to pick any character at the start of the run, and then once that character has escaped or died, you move on to the next character of your choice until you reset the simulation. The intensity of enemies is pretty light at the start of the first run, but as more time passes, things get wilder. You can do certain things to hold back the crazium meter, but at certain points, it's not going to go back down. That means if you take too long to escape as one character, the other characters are going to have a very hard time. To balance this out though, you get violence points that allows you to start your escapes with stuff like unlocked blueprints for trying to get out, and you can start with a whole bunch of stuff. Also, your ability unlocks persists through simulations, so you can really build momentum after a few runs. Best of all is that certain characters can only do certain things, like Joan being the engineer of the group who can fix doors, or the security chief being the security chief, so he can access defensive drones which you can summon to keep the monsters at bay in certain areas, which makes you play around with your run orders because it can be really beneficial to have Joan go first and fix all the doors and make sure everything's unlocked, but it can be also really beneficial to have the security chief go first because he can set up a bunch of drones, meaning that when things get more chaotic, there's something keeping all the monsters at bay. I think when we compare the two loops, Deathloop's looping system is a step back from Mooncrash's way of doing things, and while keeping the intensity tied to how many visionaries are dead is good for approaching things as you see fit and taking time to learn the levels and making it easier at the end, there's no urgency and you end up overbuilding your character by the time you do the perfect loop. There's also the matter of how everything is exactly the same in Deathloop, meaning that it gets by design very predictable after your first 6 to 8 hours of play, so you stop experimenting because you figured the game out and it's just a matter of finishing the leads to set up the perfect day. Even things as trivial as which metro stations are operational and where the land shark is going to spawn make subsequent runs of Mooncrash more fun to do over and over again, especially when compared to Deathloop. Now, I'll say it here for the sake of posterity, but when I tweeted while writing about my feelings on Mooncrash versus Deathloop, I got actually and was told that Deathloop and Mooncrash were made by different branches of Arkane, with one being made by Leon and one being made by Austin. This doesn't really change my opinion on either game. I feel like the two are very similar in concept and are made by sister studios, but one is clearly better than the other. That doesn't mean Arkane Austin is going to be the better of the two studios every time, as Leon's made a ton of good games too, and frankly, I don't even want to start comparing the two like that because it's just a pointless pissing contest. Let's wrap this up because I want to make a standalone video and I can't do that if I put all my talking points here. If I had to pick a key detail as to why Mooncrash had so much more going for it, I'd have to say that it was built on top of Prey rather than being made its own thing. Deathloop does play a lot of the hits that Arkane has made over the years, but it still had to build itself from the ground up, whereas Mooncrash was built on top of Prey. By the way, if you haven't already, it's 100% worth it to play both Prey and Mooncrash if you're looking for that kind of game. My final thoughts on Deathloop are that it's a perfectly good game, just not what I'd expect from Arkane, and in many ways it feels like it's a step backwards, especially when you take Prey's Mooncrash expansion into account. I wouldn't advise anyone against buying Deathloop if you really wanted to, but given the choice between the two, I'd say spend your money on Prey plus the Mooncrash expansion, which should also save you about 20 bucks as Prey's been around for a while now, and Deathloop is pretty new. I really hope that Arkane's next game is more of what I like to see from them, them, but at the same time, Deathloop is what I like to see from Arkane. It's a solid game that experiments mechanically and lets players approach tasks in almost any way they can think of, but it just didn't quite land right. So up next, we're going to take a break from impressive blimps and talk about a game that is near and dear to my own childhood and some RTS goodness. I think anyway. You never know when a cool idea for a video is going to make you drop everything. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching this video, and if you can and you'd like to, please consider supporting me and the channel making cool videos like this one on Patreon, where you can get early videos and a ton of other cool stuff. In the meantime though, please stay safe, stay indoors, bundle up when you gotta go out, and enjoy this cat video. Did I wake you? Oh, wait, what's happening? Oh no, party's over, guys. I'm gonna go for the pet. Okay, just enjoy my hoodie. Oh! Do it! Do it! Dare you!